to Ask the Patient Advocate Podcast, where we will discuss all things related to navigating your health. I am Dr. Elena Borrelli, and I'm so excited to talk about such an important topic of private patient advocacy. Managing your health and navigating the healthcare system is challenging, but it's a lot better when we go through it together. Welcome back to a new episode of Ask the Patient Advocate Podcast. Today's conversation focuses on someone we don't talk enough about in healthcare, the actual caregiver. When someone is diagnosed with cancer, the spotlight rightfully focuses on the patient. But behind almost every patient is someone quietly holding everything together. Today, we are honored to welcome Charlotte Bayala, a speaker, yoga and meditation teacher, caregiver advocate, and host of the Cancer Caregiver Podcast. Charlotte brings both lived experience and practical tools to help caregivers breathe, reset, and protect their own well-being. I'm so excited about this episode. So Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy right now to be able to speak to you. So thanks for having me
Thank you.
on.
Yeah, so you have been a longtime caregiver to your husband through cancer. Can you share what that experience has taught you about caregiving that most people don't see?
Yeah, I think the problem with caregiving outside of the caregiver is that a lot of what we do is invisible, right? What most
Sure.
people don't see is that caregiving isn't one role. It's dozens. You become the medical translator, the scheduler, the emotional buffer, the logistics manager, the person who remembers medications and appointments and symptoms and side effects. But you're also doing this while you're trying to keep life moving forward. And so you're doing all of that while also carrying fear and uncertainty and grief just quietly inside of you. And that's all layered on top of your existing life. So it's not just helping someone heal. It's not, you can't consider a caregiver as anything that's one title or role or make it simple. It's holding an entire system together. And the problem is that most caregivers don't feel brave or heroic while they're doing it. They're just tired and feel overwhelmed with the responsibilities that they have and alone.
There's so much I feel like going on as a caregiver. Sometimes it's like in my opinion, you don't have time to stop and kind of analyze what's going on because there's no
Mhm.
time. It's just like you're kind of going. At least that's how, in my experience as a caregiver for a loved one with cancer, I
Yeah.
can definitely relate with that. So caregiver burnout is something that we hear about, but
Mhm.
many caregivers don't even recognize it themselves. Again,
Yeah.
probably because, in my opinion, they don't have time to. I don't know. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think with burnout, it doesn't come as a dramatic collapse, right?
Mm,
It it
true, yeah.
slowly starts to inch its way into a person's life and their mental health and their physical health in such most times a slow progression that they just try to incorporate these new feelings of like irritability or brain fog or forgetting words, trouble sleeping or feeling like they're on a short fuse or like they can constantly feel like they're on. And so we start as caregivers to normalize that exhaustion. And people will tell themselves this is just how it is right now, as if it's just for, this acute phase of caregiving and that it'll go away. But then there's the pressure to stay strong for your partner, for your family, for your kids, your workplace, if you're working outside of the home. And so, what I find is that caregivers, instead of asking, how am I doing? Even if it's just a short check in during the beginning or the end of the day, what caregivers are really asking is, what else needs to get done? What more do I need to do for the people that I'm caring for? And so oftentimes that burnout actually hides inside responsibilities that they have. And it's really hard for them to identify, oh, I'm feeling a lot more stress or anxiety or worry. I think I need to take a couple of steps to care for myself a little bit more today, give myself a little bit more love, because they're not able to feel like they have that time to check in with themselves. And if they see what's actually happening, don't have the opportunity or the advocacy for their own care to take that time for themselves to attend to things before they do come to that burnout situation.
I think that's great advice, and that makes sense. I will say, before I started working as a patient advocate years ago, I cared for my son who was critically ill, very, very sick in the hospital for years. And I remember probably more than one time actually, but I would be like, have gone, be at the hospital days and days without sleeping. And I'm sure I looked like a disaster. And I don't even remember, probably I lived off of coffee. And I remember one time there was this doctor that said to me, like, I asked a question, which I asked tons of questions, right? And
Yeah.
he had looked at me and he was like, when's the last time that you slept? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Please answer my, my question. And he was like, you should really just like maybe go home or sleep here and just and I almost took it as offensively, like he's just trying to like dodge my
Right.
questions. But in reality, looking back, I'm like, oh wow, he's probably trying to help me because I was like not really at my best, peak ability
Yeah.
to care for the loved one. So I mean, I get it. It's just it's hard to, I think, as a caregiver, in my opinion, to
Mhm.
like accept that you're burnt out
Mhm.
sometimes. But I agree. I think
Yeah.
we brought really good points. So looking back to the early days of your husband's diagnosis,
Mhm.
what do you wish someone had told you about being a caregiver that would have made the season feel a little less overwhelming?
Mm. Yeah. I wish someone would had told me that I didn't have to earn rest, that it was okay for me to feel oppositional emotions, that I could feel both grateful and resentful at the same time. And that taking care of myself shouldn't have been put on the back burner because it wasn't just me doing something that maybe I felt was trivial or selfish, that it was something that was actually needed for the structure of the system that was put together to help my husband through everything to actually work the way we all wanted it to. So if it was someone that would have said, "You don't have to do this perfectly and you're allowed and should deserve to get the help that you need, and you don't have to carry everything emotionally on your own," and that I didn't need to be perfect, but also that I didn't need permission, right? I think we get a lot of information as caregivers, and I didn't need to wait to have permission from someone to say, "Hey, you can take this time." I needed someone to say, you know, "You deserve the things that you feel that you need, and you don't have to wait for someone to tell you that it's okay for you to take that time to do it."
I love that. I haven't heard that perspective, and it makes so much sense. I wish I would have heard that a long time ago as well. I think many of our listeners will definitely appreciate hearing that. Caregiving over so many years changes a person, I believe.
Mhm.
In what ways has this journey reshaped your identity, not just as a caregiver, but as a woman, a partner, an individual?
Yeah. I think, for me, especially with cancer in the house, I can see that it has really stripped things down to what actually matters. There's a lot of things that I feel would have taken up more space emotionally in my life before I became a caregiver that they don't even come up on my radar anymore. Um, but it also taught me how fragile control really is. I think before you're kind of shown right off the start that you really have no control over a person's health as much as we'd like to. Um, but that then on the flip side of it, how powerful presence can be, right? How to slow down more, the importance of being able to listen, to respect my own limits and become, more honest about my needs and more protective of my energy. And as a partner, I it has deepened my compassion and my connection with my husband. I know that's not always the case for a caregiver and the person they care for. So I really appreciate being able to have been brought closer in our relationship because of the way that we've gone through this together. But as a woman, it's just taught me resilience I didn't know I had, and also the power that I have inside, the strength that I didn't always think that I would have needed to get through in life. But now to have to advocate for my husband was something that I had to really foster and allow to come out because, I feel like oftentimes as a woman, where we have this tendency to want to be small. So it was me learning how to take up space, especially in the hospital system for my husband, but also pausing and understanding how, a pause is really important when things are extremely important. So it's really helped me, learn so much about myself, but also how to build my work around what I've learned in order to help other caregivers so that, we are all kind of facing, no matter why you're a caregiver, there are a lot of similarities, a lot of parallels of the things that we need as a person, as in our relationships, in the way that we connect or have lost connections. So I really love having been able to have the mindfulness to be able to actually learn these things, right? Because oftentimes we're kind of struggling through caregiving and not really seeing ourselves as people evolve in this role. So being able to actually have that opportunity has been great.
That's amazing. And speaking about pausing, you teach breathing tools and nervous system regulation strategies,
Mhm.
which is so great. For someone listening right now who feels overwhelmed, what's one simple practice they could perhaps start today?
Yeah, the first thing that I usually teach caregivers is a simple way to breathe. And breath work for me is always kind of like the gateway to caring for yourself because it's with you all the time. We're always breathing. We don't hardly ever choose to control it, but we can if we want to. And so, what I teach caregivers at the very start is to simply bring in a longer exhale. We often do it when we're upset, we might sigh. When we're happy, we might also sigh, or exasperated like that. A sigh is a longer exhale. Breathing and singing, that's a longer exhale. That's why when we do those things, we feel a slight change in how our nervous system is reacting to what it's going through. And the longer exhale actually is a signal for your nervous system to just take a moment to know that it's safe and it's okay to release and to switch into a more calmer set of thought patterns and to allow your body to relax. So simply, whatever your breath is, you can tell when you bring in a breath and then let the breath out a little bit longer. It doesn't require any special training or counting. When I lead people, I gently have them breathe in for 4 seconds and out for 4 seconds. But that also is determined by your ability to breathe in that long and out that long. So always adjust it however you need to. But just that extra long exhale, it's also just a way to bring you to a pause, right? But you can do it while you're irritated and standing in the supermarket line or when you're waiting in an oncology waiting room and you just really feel anxious. Nobody can tell that you're doing it. You're just sitting there and breathing. It's very covert. It could be your special secret skill that nobody knows about. So that's the best thing that I can give people to do.
I love that. I love that because it's something that they can kind of do anytime they need to. It doesn't require special
Mhm.
tools or anything like that. That's great.
Yeah.
So, I would love to keep talking to you forever. It's very interesting. But unfortunately, before we wrap up, where can our listeners learn more about you and how great you are?
Thank you. Well, you can find me at charlottebayala.com. I host the Cancer Caregiver Podcast, where I share just real conversations and practical tools for people caring for someone with cancer. I also have a short form breathing show called Caregiver Breathing Room. And that is actually for even non caregivers, this is a good tool, but it offers 5-minute resets for people holding everything together. On my website, I have the Scanxiety Toolkit that helps anyone who feels kind of that anxiety and overwhelm in between and before their loved ones' doctor's appointments and scans. So you can learn about that and just the workshops and other resources that I have at charlottebayala.com.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for bringing such compassion and wisdom to this episode. Your work reminds us that caregiving is not just an act of love, it's a role that requires support, acknowledgement, and knowledge. Thank you again, Charlotte, for joining me, and I really hope that this conversation helps our listeners feel more confident as they navigate their healthcare journeys.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Have a great day. If you have a question for Ask the Patient Advocate, email advocate@pathwaypa.com. Managing your health and navigating the healthcare system is challenging, but it's a lot better when we go through it together.